Yo, welcome back to another item review where we talk about items that are interesting or that just, in my opinion, need to be discussed or could use some explanation in old school RuneScape. Today we're going to talk about the Soulreaper axe. Of all the items I could be reviewing at this point, it's just being my second one. This is the one I chose because it's a really interesting one, not just because of the mechanics that everyone knows about, but also about all the use cases that it has. Which some people aren't aware of how broad the use cases are for this item. I feel a lot of people are, but a lot of people also are not. So we might as well talk about it a little bit. So we'll gloss over the mechanics of how a Soul Reaper Axe works, basically, really quick, even though it's not our main focus. I'm assuming you probably already know that, but just in case you don't, a Soul Reaper Axe damages you for 8 damage the first 5 times that you swing it, and this builds up the strength of the axe. And then if you don't attack over a set period of time, this damage will be refunded back to you as health, and you'll lose that power in the axe. You also have a spec that will instantly give you all the HP back and give you a more powerful hit. And I can't really think of much else to say off the top with it. I think that's basically how it works. Other than that, it's just like a really, really strong weapon, basically. It's a 5-tick slash and crush weapon. Primarily a slash weapon, but it does have a crush style. Let's go ahead and move on over to the Paint 3D masterpieces that I've put together for today. Here's just the header. It's 344 mil right now. Obviously, a very expensive item, but like I said, it's very useful in a lot of places, and it's also very hard to create. So I'd imagine that has quite a bit to do with why it's so expensive. But when you consider the fact that a scythe is 1 point what, like 7 bill right now, and this is like 25% of that, if even that, I think. And it's also like, this is basically, we'll talk about it more when we get to the use cases here in a second, but this is your scythe before you get a scythe, basically. That's what this is offering to you. If you didn't already know what the Soul Reaper Axe has to offer, that's what this weapon is offering, basically. So let's move on to those use cases. So we'll start with, where is the weapon best in slot? And this is potentially maybe one of the reasons why it's not got such a strong reputation, is that it's not bis at many places, as in like the #1 weapon. It is bis at Vardorvis, crabs at Maiden and P2 Verzik, so those red crabs at Maiden and P2 Verzik, and also on the Eclipse Moon at Perilous Moons. These are the 3 locations that I could think of where it is the best in slot weapon, period. You can't get a better one in the game. These first 2 have the common thread of being like 2x2 enemies, which are kind of rare. We don't really even have 1x1 enemies in the game at all, and that's where this thing would really shine. And then the Eclipse Moon it just plays out that way. But this is where the Soul Reaper Axe really, in my opinion, gets what makes it worthwhile and worth talking about, is that it is second bis at Tob, Olm, Soul, Araxor, Nightmare, Duke, Cerberus, Grotesque Guardians, a Moxleyotl, Huey Codal. I could name some more. I just put etc. here because I ran out of space. And when I say it's second best in slot at these places, if you look here in the bottom left, this is essentially how the damage calculation plays out. Generally speaking, when you're comparing the Soul Reaper Axe to a Scythe and a Whips or a Noxious Halberd, the Soul Reaper Axe is 12% worse than the Scythe, but it is 12% better than the Whip and Noxious Halberd. So it's right in the middle of a Scythe and a Whip, or Scythe and a Whip in terms of DPS. And a Nox Halberd, in case you weren't aware, is identical to a Whip, Tentacle Whip in terms of DPS. It's not better. So yeah, that's where the Soul Reaper Axe lands. And that's a really significant jump. And that gets you halfway to a scythe at like a quarter of the price point. That's pretty good in my opinion. I'm not invested in the item or anything, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to sell it on you, but I'm reviewing it because I feel like it's a really useful item and worth talking about, and I just wanted to give it some credit where it's due for, being useful at so many places. Some of these places are crush weak bosses too, but in pretty much all these places you're noticing a trend of these are bosses that are weak to scythe, basically, and whether it's the crush scythe or the slash scythe, and the Soul Reaper Axe can basically come in and do the second best job in the scythe's stead at every single one of those locations, because it has a slash style and a crush style. So that's like the long list of places where it's second best by a pretty significant margin, and in my opinion, that's what really makes it like a good item. Like it's in terms of a max bank, a max player's bank who has everything. This is like a really niche and like subpar item that seems overpriced because you just use it at Vardorvis basically, and then it just sits in your bank. But if you're a player who can't afford a scythe yet, this item, in my opinion, is a very, very good one and one that you should not sleep on. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. And keep an eye out for more of these or leave suggestions for other items you'd want to hear about if you have any. Yeah, hope it was helpful.